congratulations. I want you to know that getting to this point is so important. We talked about the three things that you need prior to completing the as-is contract. First, you need a house that you want to submit an offer on. Okay, you need to have discussed what the price that you want to submit the offer on. For the price, sometime it may be the asking price. In certain cases, it may be over the asking price, and in some cases, it will be more than half the time. Most likely, it'll probably be under the asking price. All right, so we've already had that discussion. We've had the pre-approval letter already in place. Most standard buyers will have a pre-approval letter. Some investors may have proof of funds, may be their cash or line of credit. Line of credit would be, of course, a statement. And then if they have, and many of them have cash in the bank to purchase the home cash, even though they may show the cash as in the bank, they may use a hard money option to actually purchase the home. But either way, you need to show how you're going to purchase the home. So pre-approval letter or proof of funds, that's the route to go. Okay. Now, from the MLS, we've identified the house that we're going to do, and we've populated the contract. So what we're going to do now is to go over line by line the as-is residential contract for sale and purchase. Let's get started. First line, parties. Now, let me just close this out here. Okay. Now, for this particular property, we have the seller. And again, we just pulled the property at random. These are real people. So, of course, we didn't put in there any information about their address, or I'm sorry, their email address, or the listing agent, which is a real person. We do not plan on sending this to her. But we have from public record, we pulled, and this is tax information, we pulled the owner's information from public record. All right. We have our buyer put that information in, and we're using one of our agents' information. And so Latasha is the buyer for this particular property. Okay. Going down, and one thing I want to point out, if you see an asterisk by the number, that means that it requires some attention. Okay, so you want to look at and pay particular attention to the asterisks. All right, that's just a pro tip there. All right, by the seller's name, the buyer's name, we have the address of the property. We pulled the tax ID from, we could have gotten it from here. The MLS is where is a secondary source for that. So we have the address, Hillsborough County, tax ID, legal description. Now, another pro tip, it is so important that you cut and paste, copy and paste in this information, because you don't want to typo it. So again, copy and paste it, and you can actually check this legal description two ways. One, if you have access to the MLS, it's right here. And then secondly, let's say you don't have access to the MLS for whatever reason, then you can get the legal information here from tax ID, as well as the tax information, folio number, everything. Everything is here. Okay. All right. Going back to our document. So we put in tax ID information. We put in the legal description. Now, you want to read this document, but again, we're paying particular attention to the starred lines. Okay. Now, here's where it says the personal property. Now, if you are an investor, I recommend that you fill this out, because in some cases, you're not going to have access to the MLS. Okay. But for agents, you have access to the MLS. And once you send it to the listing agent, it binds. It's more of a binding contract. But again, if you're an investor out there, I would recommend that you fill out what's included and what's not included. All right, going to the purchase price. Again, the this particular home, we've already talked with the buyer, and the buyer said, for 419.9, which is what they're asking for, is fair, and we put that in. We always also had conversation with the buyer that said that they are willing to put $3,000 down as escrow. All right. This line here, line 30, it says check one, and this says the initial deposit shall to be held in escrow in amount of $3,000, and then check one. And what we're doing most common is this check here that says if left blank, that you will supply that in 3 days after the effective date. The effective date, guys, is the date that when both parties sign the contract. If neither box is checked, then option 3 shall be deemed selected. So again, this is the option. This is what's common. Now, most of us leave it blank, which is 3 days. There's in some cases, you might want to put a number in here that's beyond 3 days. Let's say, for instance, you're working with a buyer that is out of town or on vacation or don't have access to their funds immediately. Let's say they're on a cruise and they say, David, I love the house you picked it for me. I won't have be able to get to the bank for 5 days. So could you put a 5-day contingency in there? So you just type 5 days in there and boom, it says that you were supplied in 5 days. Now, most cases, you're going to have to talk to the listing agent and say, hey, listen, this is the reason why we cannot make escrow in 3 days. My buyer don't have access to his cash, or there's more than one person has an account that sign off on an account, and it may take an extra day or so for that buyer to contact the other person that have access to the account so that they can send the wire over. It may be a legitimate reason to send that wire or send that information to escrow agent that cannot be done within 3 days. It's so important, guys, because if you do not make escrow in time, you are in breach of the contract. And technically, the seller can cancel the contract. And, again, now you're fighting to return of the escrow. Actually, you never made escrow. So in most cases, the contract is just vacated. All right. Here's where you put in the escrow agent. The listing agent will provide you with this, that they're using whatever title company they're using, the title company address, and so on. Okay. Now, for investors, most investors use their own title company. So they may have a title company of preference, and then they will put that information in. All right. Additional deposits. Now, this come in handy, guys, if you want to compete and you want to make your offer extremely strong by submitting a escrow deposit that is very strong. So let's say you're trying to compete with cash offers, you're giving them full price, and you want to put, instead of 3,000, you want to put 30,000 down. And let's say you may put 10,000 initially, and then after a certain period, you're going to put another 20,000. That's where this line come in. It says additional deposit to be delivered to escrow agent, X amount if left blank, 10 days after the effective date. Now, if you use this is, and let's say this is the example I want to do, is I want to put another $10,000 down after 10 days. Okay. A lot of people don't do that, but it will make your offer extremely strong. That knowing that after the inspection period, that you are willing to put another escrow deposit down just to secure the property. And so that is makes this offer stand out from other offers that may hit the listing agent table. Okay. All right. Financing expressed in dollars and how, and so this is how you're going to finance the property, expressed in dollars or percentage. Okay. So let's say we have your buyer is let's say it's a $400,000. They're probably a conventional buyer. They're probably not an FHA buyer. It's probably a buyer that is kind of in a good spot and they're conventional. Okay, so they're gonna put down 10% and they're gonna finance 90%. Okay, so you just put the amount of percentage that they're gonna finance, which is 90%. Okay, and just something for you to consider. If this was a VA loan, they would finance 100% of the loan. If it's an FHA loan, then you're looking at the buyer have to put down 3.5%, so they would be financing 96.5%. So it depends on what type of pre-approval that the buyer has that you would need. If it's a cash, this would be zero because it'd be 100% cash. Okay. All right. Now. And then you're going to do, a lot of us put balance here, which is, it says, well, let's spell it right. It says that the balance to close, not including buyer's closing costs, prepaids, and prorations, by wire transfer to or other collectible funds shall be this amount. Okay, so what they're saying is that what you're not financing, the part that you're not financing, and any other minus your deposit, that balance, it could be written in as a balance here, or it could be written in as a amount here. Okay. So a lot of times, if you're negotiating price, a lot of us just put balance there because once you change any amount, if you put a number here, that number is going to change. So let's, for instance, say that you offered something under the asking price. Let's say they wanted $419 and you offered $400,000. Okay. But then it got countered back and forth. And then now you guys agreed to $415. Well, in every counter back and forth, you would have had to change this number here because you're still going to finance 90% of that, but this bottom line number is going to change. So if you just put balance there, a lot of agents will accept that, and you don't have to change this number every time you submit a counter, or the counter is accepted. All right, moving on, we have the time of acceptance. Now, this is what we talked about earlier. First, you want to look in the MLS or talking to the seller or the listing agent to find out if they have any problems with making an offer or accepting the offer within, in this particular case, two business days or 2 days. Sometimes they may want more. Sometimes they may want more time to evaluate, and accept the offer. And in some cases, the seller would say, hey, listen, I'm good. Just send it over to me and I can get it back to you within 24 hours. So in this particular case, we're submitting the offer and we're giving them 48 hours to accept. Okay. Closing date. Again, you've talked to the purchaser, the loan amount, the loan originator, and they said that they can close in 30 days. And that's what we gave them here is 30 days. Another note is that you do not want to close you can't close on a weekend because the banks are closed and most title companies don't want to close on a weekend. And you don't want to close on Friday. Here's a pro tip, guys. You don't want to close on Friday because I'm telling you, it always seems like when you close on Friday, guess what? Something happens. Something happens. So you close, there's things called the dry close where you close and you don't fund. You close and, you need a piece of paperwork and you don't really close. You kind of close and you partial close, but you didn't fund. So you're in this weird space where you have closed on most of it, but the owner, it hasn't, the funds haven't transferred. And so your buyer don't really own the property until the seller gets their money, but the buyer has the keys and they want to move in, and it's a mess. It's a mess. So again, try to avoid closing on a Friday if you can, especially if that Friday is near a weekend. You want to close probably on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday at the latest, as long as you're not up against the weekend. Okay? That's a pro tip. All right. So most of these things now, if you look, notice you don't have any asterisks down here. You definitely want to become familiar with this contract. Read the contract. But this is pretty much boilerplate. So if you go here, it says that this is important here. Check if the property is subject to a lease or occupancy after closing. Now, this is kind of popular, guys, because in some cases you may do a lease back. In some cases, the seller may want to have the property for a period of time after close. That was quite prominent when you have a low inventory situation, or there's some extenuating circumstances where the seller needs to kind of be there. A couple of ways of doing it. One way of here, there's some addendums that we'll talk about another time. All right. Start item here, line 83. Assignability. This is a big one. For a standard buyer, most of the time, if they're buying it conventional FHA, they're not an investor. There's a standard buyer, family, single family that want to move in. You're going to be here. You're going to say that let's move this down some. You're going to check and say that they may not assign the contract. Now, these two are more of, if you're working with investors or you're working with a business that does not know what business that they're going to put, or what name is ultimately will be on the contract. They may have multiple businesses where they want to put their this particular house under a certain LLC, and they want to tie up the house, get it all done. But then in the meantime, they may be off working with their lawyer to form a new LLC where they're going to ultimately put this property in. So these two are great for that type of situation. All right. So this first one, it says buyer may, if checked, may assign and therefore be released from any further liability under this contract. Okay. So they assign the contract and they're done. They wash their hands of the property. But more also, this is the second one that says the buyer may assign but not be released from liability under the contract. So what that one says is that the buyer can assign it to in this particular scenario, I said an LLC, but they're still responsible for that the contract closes. So they're not off the hook completely. They are still liable. Their escrow deposit is still at risk if the contract does not close. So they're still liable to make sure the contract closes. Okay. Now, in this particular case, we have a conventional standard buyer. They intend to move in. This is not an investment property. They're buying it. They intend to move it and occupy the property. So we're going to select this one here, that they may not assign the contract. All right. Moving on down, we have this is a cash offer. If this was a cash offer or a hard money situation, you would click there. And here is where we are, where this contract is contingent upon, most people leave this blank, if within 30 days after the effective date. Again, we said the effective date is when both people sign the contract, that the buyer will obtain in this particular case, we talked about it being a conventional loan. If it was a FHA loan, you would click here, VA loan here, some other type of loan there. Okay. And then the other one, these are blanks. Again, how do we find this information? From the pre-approval letter. From the pre-approval letter and your conversation with the lender. Okay, whether it's a mortgage, originator, a broker, a bank, you want to have that conversation. Hey, supply me with the pre-approval letter. Is this buyer conventional, FHA, VA, or other? And how quickly do you need? How much time do you need me to write the contract for us to close? Another pro tip, guys, is that the lender, you want to have a conversation with the lender that says, do this buyer need extra money to close? Do I need to write a contract where the seller is contributing toward the buyer's closing costs? So those are conversations that you want to have with the lender before you write this contract. All right. All right, so line 97, that's this is pretty much a blank. Buyer shall obtain financing within 5 days of the effective date, and so on. So once you go on the contract, guys, you've made the escrow deposit, whatever that escrow deposit is, within that 3 business day. The next one is that you want to make sure that your buyer, if they're financing, you want to make sure that they are working with the bank or their lender to start the loan application process. And by contract, this is within 5 business days. Okay, after the effective date. All right, so we're going further down. And of course, every page, I should say, from page 1, every page you have the initial for your buyer, and you have the seller where they will initial, but you're going to send this over to the listing agent. But we're worrying about our buyer's initial. All right, let's continue on. All right. So we was at line 97, and then we're continuing to the next page. It talks about the loan approval period, and these are, loan originator type of stuff to make sure they're compliant. It's pretty much bullet point here, not anything for us to fill out on this form. All right, so another start item, that assumption of existing mortgage, we don't have that. We have a FHA, a conventional mortgage, and then purchase money note. We're not dealing with that. Again, this is a conventional mortgage that the buyer is seeking to obtain. Okay, here is closing costs, fees, and charges. Now, this is an area where, especially where the cost to be paid by the seller and the cost to be paid by the buyer. Okay, so we can actually put in, these are the standard costs to be paid by the seller. We can actually put something in here, but most common is that the cost to be paid by the buyer. If there is a brokerage fee, if there is something that you're requiring the buyer to pay, let's say you're working with a wholesaler and you had a situation where there's a deal that a certain amount is paid, you can put that here. You can put in, again, if you're working with your brokerage and your broker says that there's a transaction fee, that this area can be put in, be put in right here in line 154. Okay, line 155, title evidence, and again, this is typically left blank, that if the title evidence of title insurance, etc., at least, if left blank 15 days is checked. So you can actually put in different amount, but most people just leave that blank. Okay, coming down, now this is one where we actually do fill out. Okay, it says right here that the seller, I'm at line 168. It says the seller shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policy and charges, and buyer shall pay for the premium for the buyer's lender's policy. This is the most common that's checked here. Now, where the seller pays for the closing agent and the owner's title policy. Okay. Now, you also have this option here. The buyer shall pay for for the closing agent and the owner's policy. Most buyers don't want to do that. And if you're in Miami, you have this one here. Okay. Again, line 168. In most cases, you want the seller to pay. Now, actually, in some cases where you're dealing with a flipper, a rehabber or something like that, they may want to pay for that if they want to use their own people. Okay. Again, this is a traditional buyer that's buying. They tend on, it's not a wholesale, it's not a flip situation, and they want the seller to pay for the closing agent and the owner's policy. All right. We talked about the survey. The survey is at least 5 days prior to closing. Typically, this is done with the title company. They typically audit that, but the buyer's agent can absolutely can order that. Okay, and actually, it's something that's quite commonly done toward the end of the contract. Home warranty. If some of the older homes, you definitely want to have a particular home warranty. This is a great negotiating point. In most cases, if it's a brand new home, you're going to probably hit in a not home warranty. But if you want the seller to pay for a home warranty, you click right here, and then it asks you to seller shall pay for home warranty plan issued by, and you can put in there if you're working with a home warranty company, you can put their name here, or you can put to be TBA, which is to be announced, and then not to exceed, let's say $600. Okay. So in this particular contract, we have the home warranty being paid by the seller, to be announced what home warranty company we're going to use, and it's not to exceed $600. Okay. Special assessment is another one that we want to be concerned with. And a special assessment is something that is over and above a regular assessment. All right. So in this particular case, if there is a special assessment, line 194, it says seller shall pay installments due prior to close and buyer shall pay installments due after close. All right. So that is the one that's most commonly done. You do see this one here, line 196, where it says seller shall pay in full prior to close any type of assessments. Now, most of the time, you check A. If there may be some cases where you want to check B, but a lot of times, especially banks, if you check B, they're going to reject it because the special assessment may be, let's say you have a condo and they just pave the parking lot, and every homeowner pays $100 for 3 years, and that's the special assessment, right? And if you click here, what you're telling the bank is that they have to pay that amount before you close. If you click here, A, it says that, okay, while a seller owns the property, they're paying the special assessment. When the buyer buys the property, they shall pay. Okay, so that's the most common one, line 194. All right. And these are disclosures. Again, these are standard disclosures. You definitely want to read to see what's there. I did a whole piece on force majeure, which is the from the hurricane that we just experienced. Another one is the flood zones and elevation certificate. You may buy a property that is in a flood zone, so you definitely want to read that and be familiar with what's in the contract. We have the lead-based paint. It says that any home that is older than 1978 must include the lead-based paint form. Okay. All right. So this is for foreign buyers, FIRTA. We have the seller disclosures and property maintenance. Okay. So here's one that doesn't really trip many people up, but I do want to let you know that except for ordinary wear and tear and the casual loss, seller shall maintain the property, including but not limited to lawn, shrubbery, and pool in the condition existing as of the effective date. Okay, so what that means in layman terms, or what that means, guys, is that if you go into a property and the property is in a certain condition as of the effective date, then when you close on that property, it should basically be in the same condition, including lawn and shrubbery. So what some sellers do, and the more things that are more common is that you get under contract, it takes 30 days to close, and the seller never cut the grass for those 30 days. And so when you get ready to close now, the grass is up to your ankles. And the seller has to maintain the property in the condition that it was upon as if it was effective date. Now, here is the true power of this contract. This is the property inspection right to cancel. I call this the buyer's get out of jail free card. Basically, it is. I'm going to read the actual term, but well, let's read it. Buyer shall have, if left blank, 15 days. More common, it's usually people put in between 7 and 11 days for 7 or 11 days here after the effective date. Okay, remember, this is the effective date is when both people sign. We should call this the inspection period, within which to have such inspections of the property performed as buyer shall desire during the inspection period. If buyer determine in buyer's sole discretion that the property is not acceptable to the buyer, buyer may terminate this contract by delivering within notice, written notice of such election to seller prior to the expiration date. Okay, so prior to this date that you put in here, prior to the expiration of the inspection period. If buyer timely terminates this contract, the deposit, the escrow deposit paid shall be returned to the buyer thereupon. Okay. Now, it says if you give written notice prior to the date that you put in here that you don't want the property, they shall return your escrow deposit. So important, guys. And it goes further on. You should read it, but basically that is your get out of jail card. So you can put in, I'm going to go back up here. You can put in let's say this again, we put in, instead of 3,000, we put in 30,000. Now I've worked with a client. It was a condo, and he was going to purchase it cash, and he wanted to really win this condo. I mean, it was super hot. It was a really hot time. And he put in the entire amount of the condo right here, all 180,000. So he put all 180,000 in escrow. But you better believe that when we got close and we asked for a 10-day inspection period. So you better believe on day 8, 9, and 9, I am telling this buyer in writing many, many times, are you sure you want to continue? Because on day 11, in that particular case, again, we had a 10-day inspection period. On day 11, that money went hard, and he wasn't going to get it back in most cases. So this is, again, your get out of jail free card. And this is the reason why as-is contracts are the most commonly used, because right here, it is in black and white that, let me read it to you again, in buyer's sole discretion. The buyer don't have to, consult with anything and beg and the seller and try to congeal. Even the buyer don't even have to tell the seller why he want to cancel. As long as he present in writing the cancellation, he's going to get his escrow back according to this clause here. That's the power of the as-is contract. So again, you as a investor listing agent, you definitely want to read this and become familiar with this clause. Starting at line 260. Boom. Get out of jail free card. All right, so here it is. Continuing on. Now you notice that there's no stars here, so it's pretty much just boilerplate. We have the walkthrough inspection. Again, they have to make the property available for us to walk through. Seller assistance, incorporating and close out, and building permits. They got to close out the building permits. So you guys, you should read this escrow agent, how they should handle the escrow. Professional advice, broker liability. Definitely, this is the broker advises buyer and seller to verify property condition and so on. Okay. All right. the default and dispute. Sometimes there is a dispute that comes up, and then so this covers the dispute resolution, attorney fees, and so on. Again, this is standard within this contract. You notice that there are no asterisks by the line numbers, and so there's no changes that you can make, and so it basically is what it is, and so you are responsible to read it and know what it is. Title, survey, any ingress or egresses, lease information, so on, liens. Again, you want to know this. The title company is responsible, will do a lien search and so on. Now, I do want to talk about force majeure, because this comes up, especially in Florida. It says that the buyer or seller shall not be required to exercise or perform any right or obligations under this contract, or be liable to each other for damages, so long as performance or non-performance of the right or obligations, or the availability of services, insurance, or required approval is essential to closing, is disrupted, delayed, cause or prevented by a force majeure event. And it goes on to say force majeure event means hurricanes, floods, extreme weather, earthquakes, fires, and other acts of God. Okay, so guys, I have a whole another training here that just covers this addendum, because or this piece, because we just went through a hurricane, and we had a property that fell under this. So basically, if it's a hurricane event or act of God, this kicks in. All right, so I'm going to read some more. Unusual transportation delays, wars, insurrections. We just had, something crazy go on. Civil unrest or acts of terrorism, governmental actions, and mandates, government shutdowns, epidemics, pandemics. So, pandemic we had with COVID, this would have kicked in if we couldn't close, which by exercise of reasonable due diligence efforts, the non-performing party is unable to, in whole or in part, to prevent or overcome the force majeure event, will be deemed to have begun on the first day of the effect of the force majeure prevents performance or non-performance, or the availability of services, insurance, or requirement of. Okay, so let's stop right here. Insurance. One thing that you need to be aware of, especially if you're financing, is that the financing company will require you to get insurance on the property. Now, if there is a named hurricane in what's called the box, and we're going to have some training on what the box is, they're not going to bind insurance to that property. You would have to wait until either get insurance before a named hurricane hit the box, or you have to wait till the named hurricane passes, moves out of the box before the insurance company will write insurance on that property. So that's important. Okay, so insurance are required approval essential to closing. Here's the key, guys. All time periods affected by the force majeure event, including closing date, will be extended a reasonable time up to 7 days. Okay, so when hurricanes come through, and after that event, you have 7 days, and of course, a delay in closing was caused by that. Let's say, for instance, you couldn't get insurance. You have 7 days after that event, and all of your timelines are shifted. So if you was to close like 2 days after the event that was altered by the hurricane, and you could not close, you have 7 days after the effect of the event ends, and then now everything is shifted. Okay, up to 7 days or a reasonable amount of time. That's what this says. Let's see, continue on. 7 days after the force majeure event no longer presents prevents performance under this contract. Okay. Provided, however, closing date, uh, 1 second, closing date, uh, then either party may terminate. Okay, so I'm sorry. I skipped a line here. However, if such force majeure events continues to prevent performance under the contract more than 30 days beyond that, then either party may uh, cancel the contract by submitting written notice to each other. Okay, so that's important. So again, if you, let's say something happens and let's say it's a flood event, right? And the house is pretty torn up and you cannot get the house back to how it was at time of inspection, at time of the effective date within 30 days, then you can submit written notice to the other party and you're out of the you will be out of the contract and your money will be returned. Again, this is a something, especially in Florida and other, it covers acts of God. So you're looking at, if it's a tornado, hurricane, there's even government shutdown, civil unrest, and so on. You are covered by this particular clause, and it's so important. And again, 439 is where it starts. Let's move on. Uh, Closing date and location. Typically, the title company reaches out and let you know when the paperwork is ready, what location you're going to close. But that's in here. Escrow on closing, that's in here. Proration and credit. Again, this is most of the time the title company is handling this part, and they are providing title company or a lawyer that is closing, working, doing the closing, and they provide you with an alter statement, which would have your prorates and what each party would do. Okay, access to the property to conduct appraisal, inspection, and walkthroughs. Yes, the seller has to provide it. Risks of loss. Again, these are boilerplate stuff. 1031 exchanges. This contract covers basically every scenario, guys. And what we're covering here is boilerplate. It's not something that you would have to change, and you should be familiar with. Again, the any waivers, riders, collections, um, applicable law, FERTA, tax withholding, and again, it comes down here, and then in line 581. This is not something that you would have to modify. Again, there's no stars by here. And it says that the buyer waiver of claims to the extent permitted by law, buyer waivers, any claims against the seller, against any real estate licensee involving in this negotiating of this contract for any damages or defects pertaining to physical condition of the property that may exist at closing of the contract and to be subsequently discovered by the buyer or anyone claiming by through, under, or against the buyer. This provision does not relieve the seller obligations to comply with paragraph 10J. The standard X shall survive closing. Okay, so some things actually survive closing, and it says right here what that is. Okay, now additional addendums. We will have other training on other addendums, but these are the addendums that are most commonly associated with this particular contract. And then if there is one that is not on here, you can click here, other, and then just type that in. And once you do that, that is part of this contract, guys. It is bound. It is a binding document to this contract. Now, if there are any additional terms, you would type that in here. The more common additional terms are where the seller contributes a certain amount toward the buyer's closing costs. The seller contributes a closing concession. And as you remember, that is the conversation that I wanted you to have with the loan originator before before the buyer even got into your car. Is do I need to write in to the contract any closing costs or any type of special condition on behalf of the buyer? Most common is that, yeah, they really would need the seller to contribute 5,000 toward, or X amount toward closing, and that's where you would type it in here. You type it in here or write an additional addendum where you would say, and buyer and seller agree. Well, let's type it in. Buyer and seller agree that the seller will contribute. How do I spell it right? Let's say 5,000 towards the buyer's closing costs and prepays. Okay. And let's do the dollar sign here. Prepaid, PAIDS. Yep. Okay. All right. And then say, and boom. And now, if it signs, the seller will contribute at close 5,000 toward to help the buyer close on the property. All right. And then again, here we've already put in here the buyer's name. We put in the seller's names. In this particular case, we have two sellers. We put in the buyer's agent information. Okay. And then we put in the listing agent information. Okay. And then boom. Congratulations. You have completed the as-is form. So all you need to do now is save. And you will send this to the buyer, your buyer, for signature. If you're using .loop like we're using now, then you can actually send it electronically to them. Or, you can actually just print it out and have the buyer sign initial each page. So starting at page 1, you got there. And there's, as you can see, there's initial on every page. Now, here's what a lot of people missed. Here on the last page, 12 of 12, not only do the buyer signs, but they also initial the page. A lot of people have the buyer signature, but then they forget this last one to initial. And there you have it, guys. Again, congratulations. You've gotten to this point. You've worked with your buyer, whether it took you one time or 100 times of showing homes. You've gotten there. They decided on a price. They decided to submit an offer. You've gotten all the paperwork together, and you've completed the as-is contract. The only things left is to complete the addendums, which we're going to cover at another time. And if you are using financing, you would add to the package the information that you send over to the listing agent, your pre-approval information. If you're doing cash, then you're going to put in like a bank statement or some information stating that you have a line of credit or you intend to use some other form to pay for the property. Again, you've come a long way, and you should be proud of where you are. I want you to look at this form, complete it, fill it out, get it signed, get it over to the other side, and congratulations, you have it. You've worked hard. You've completed this process. Good luck and stay grinding.